I've asked them just to talk for 2 or 3 minutes initially about the sector they're representing, what they've observed during the pandemic that's impacted on their sector, what they just provide some context, what they think the challenges are, what some opportunities might be, and then we're going to open up to the floor for questions. You can put your questions in the chat, or you can put your hand up, and I'll try and get everyone to put that forward. When we get closer to the end of the session, I'll ask the panelists just to sum up a key takeaway of what people could do for their business in that area. Does that sound okay to everybody? Hope so. I'm seeing some nods. So we've got 4 members today. So we've got Sarah Hawthorne from Infusion Comms, who's going to cover communications and PR. We've got Manny Singh from Bobble Digital. A lot of you will know Manny, and he's going to cover digital marketing. So a broad area there, but that'll include social media, paid advertising, all of that. We've got Alex Moore from Pomanda, who's going to be focusing on online lead generation, online prospecting, and how you can network virtually. And we've got Andy Romero-Birkbeck from We Are Wellbeing, who's going to cover wellbeing, resilience for yourself, for your employees, for your company, which we all need, quite frankly. Okay, so I'm going to ask the panel in that order, if that's okay, to introduce themselves and just say a few words about what the pandemic how the pandemic has impacted that sector, and what their initial thoughts are. So Sarah, over to you, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Hawthorne. As Jess has mentioned, I am MD of a PR agency called Infusion Comms. We work quite a niche industry, so we work in the energy industry, and we do a lot of renewables, offshore wind, robotics, power transmission, distribution kind of work. So it's really specialist, although my background covers things like construction, building services, even a bit of agriculture. There's a few images I'm going to share with you in a second, but from our point of view, I think we've seen communications take a real sort of prominent place in the last year. I think a lot of people have realised how important it is to communicate, especially when you suddenly had, you know, however many employees separate, working from home. You had to communicate what was happening to them, to your suppliers, to your customers, and internal comms in particular really came to the fore and has continued to be a really important part of the communication suite for most people. So I'm just going to quickly just share a couple of images, just that I think encapsulate for me kind of what we are seeing over the last year in terms of communications. So I'm just going to hit this one. Can you see that image?
Yeah, we can see that.
Perfect. Okay. So this one I really wanted to share simply because I think we're all really familiar with it. A message from our CEO dominated our inboxes last year, and I went from not knowing a single person to wondering whether I should put them on my Christmas card list. And we saw so many emails coming in from our CEOs and from our MDs that we were a bit overwhelmed with it, and I don't think it really, at this point, we're still seeing them, and it's not very helpful, I think, too, is because it's an overload of information. So I'm just going to quickly stop sharing and then share the next one, which was this one. This is, I really like this one. I think it's really well done. It shows how really big brands were trying to help each other and how everybody needed to come together to try and figure out a way through this. So this is Burger King's ad that they took out advising you to go and eat at every other fast food restaurant they could think of. And it did really well, it performed really well in terms of it got a lot of coverage. There was a lot of discussion about it online. And I think it was a really good demonstration of a brand saying, hang on a minute, everybody's struggling here, so let's just kind of spread the love, if you like. And then the final one, Jess, I hope I'm okay on time. If not, I will run through. The final one, actually, this came through my door yesterday. And I wanted to put it on because it's actually for a funeral planner, and it arrived yesterday given the headlines that we'd seen. And for me, I wanted to point this out because I felt it just did not hit the mark. I feel the tone of it is entirely wrong for the situation that we're all in and we're all facing. And from a branding and a communications point of view, you really have to think about the timing of anything that you're sending out and the tone of it as well. And I think that one did not hit the mark for me at all in terms of communications. And that, I think I'm probably just about on time there, so I will leave it at that and let the other panelists introduce themselves.
Thank you, Sarah. Really interesting. That'll get some juices flowing, I think, for people with questions. Okay, Manny.
Morning, afternoon now. So in the morning, afternoon, everyone. Thanks, obviously, to Leeds Trinity for inviting me along. So I'm Manny, digital marketing expert. I run and I'm CEO of Bubble Digital, digital marketing agency in Leeds. We cover everything from strategy, Google Ads, search engine optimization, paid social advertising, video advertising, display, TV. If it's digital, we do it, which is why I've been asked today to help answer your burning questions around digital marketing, because we get industry insights in terms of what's going on. And what I can say is that the world of digital the last 10 months has been anything but fascinating right now. We're seeing such a big swing in what's going on right now. Businesses, obviously, directly impacted by the pandemic, all businesses, individual, micro, small, medium, large. Some sectors as hospitality, travel, taking a significant hit in terms of how they can communicate online. Then you've got other businesses that were retailers that have adapted online, and some retailers that still, like Primark, refuse to go online and look to be losing out on £1 billion worth of revenue, showing how important it is. The key thing that we've seen, or I've seen within the industry, is that those companies that are prepared, those companies that are putting together a strategy to tackle the environment, those that are being agile, those that are adapting their business model in the current pandemic, are the ones that are seeing not just the first, the second, but the third lockdown that we're now in, and actually come out of it stronger each time. One quote I want to reference is a while back is, you've got to consider this as a recession. And when the CEO of Walmart was asked for his opinions and views on the last recession, he said, thought about it and decided not to take part. And that is the mentality that businesses should have. And it sounds scary, like how do we just forget that, there's economical issues going on, there's environmental issues going on, there's business issues and elements going on. But if you work on your digital strategy, if you look at the trends happening, I'll be happy to share some of them based on the questions we've already seen come through. And at the end, I'll give my tips in terms of the key elements I think businesses should really be focusing on towards the end. But please do ask any questions. We've seen so much happen within the digital sphere in the last 10 months. It's ever changing and will continue to change. Some of the changes are here to stay. Some things will go back. And that's what I'm here to help explain and give insights on.
Thank you, Manny. Okay, over to you, Alex.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Alex Moore. I'm head of business development at a company called Pomander. Now, you might not have heard of Pomander. Part of the reason for that is we only launched our company information platform in June 2020 last year. One of the things I wanted to talk today to everybody about was, and share some advice, was around prospecting remotely. So the impact of the pandemic has affected everybody. And from a position of being able to meet new people, obviously we can't go out, we can't talk to people anymore. Networking and events are all cancelled. Likely be a while before that industry comes back around and online. So actually, how do we get out there and how do we make connections? How do we find new customers? And how do we build relationships with new people? So I suppose there's two reasons why Pomander is relevant. The first part is we're a company information platform. So a lot of our customers use us to do their research around finding companies that they want to talk to, understanding which directors they're interested in talking to as well. And we've been helping a number of different companies across multiple sectors come up with good prospecting strategies. The other way is, in terms of why it's relevant today, I suppose, with Pomander, is we actually launched this product, in the middle of a lockdown. So we went from not knowing who's going to get value out of this, not knowing who's going to use it, not knowing who's going to like this product, to figuring out who our target market is, reaching out to new people, making connections, and then ultimately building a customer base. So what I really wanted to share with you today was actually a little bit about the journey that we've been on. I mean, my background covers a number of different sectors. I've worked in food and retail. I've worked in software. I've worked in parking. I've worked in transportation and consultancy as well. So I wanted to share some of the tips that I've picked up across those industries and how actually you can use things such as LinkedIn You can use other methodologies of working remotely to meet people, make connections. So we went through sort of a 3-stage process, which is actually ask yourself who gets value from the product or service I'm selling, and that could be a new or existing product. And then the 2 bits that everyone's having a bit of trouble with at the minute are how do I reach them? And then how do I start the conversation? So a lot of the work I've done in the past has been around using LinkedIn. So I really wanted to share some insight. And if you've got any questions around sort of tips, you want some tips around using LinkedIn to meet people today, then I'll be happy to help with that.
Thanks very much, Alex. I think a lot of people here are on LinkedIn, so there may be a LinkedIn question for you. Yeah. And finally, but not least, Andy. You're on mute, Andy.
I had a bit of interference earlier, so I thought I'd mute myself just in case. Hope you're all doing well. So yeah, my name's Andy. So I'm the founder and director of an organisation called We Are Wellbeing. So for me, my sort of background, I suppose, is I've been working in health and wellbeing for absolutely years. Well, since my professional career started at 17, a little bit older than that now. But what we did is in January 2020, we decided to sort of rebrand and relaunch the organisation. Probably the worst year on record to launch a new business venture. And it was one of those for us in the first pandemic. And the first lockdown, it was a complete nightmare. We struggled like a lot of other organisations. And one of the things that kind of came out of that struggle was this great opportunity to support other organisations. So we saw the team and I, we sort of resigned ourselves to the fact that we were not going to make what we thought we were going to make. We're not going to develop what we thought we were going to develop in that initial lockdown. So what we started to do, we started to reach out to other organisations that were really struggling. So one of the things that we did that worked really well was we reached out to the hospitality industry, and we partnered with a couple of organisations. One of those was an organisation called the Drinks Trust and the NTIA, the Nighttime Industry Association. So we were kind of really interested in supporting those organisations that were almost on a bit of a cliff edge. And we're able to do that and look at the wellbeing strategies that were in place and kind of almost direct them to the support that was potentially needed. And it worked out quite well. And we off the back of that, and once organisations started going back to work, the good work that we'd put in there, the hard work that we'd invested and the support that we'd provided when otherwise we'd have struggled, actually kind of turned the business around. So fortunate for us, we're in a position now where we've picked up some reasonable amounts of business. We're working with a lot of different sectors, and for us, it's supporting organisations that are big and small, so SMEs right up to international organisations. But what happens with wellbeing is when an organisation starts looking at a wellbeing strategy, it gets dropped on HR. And funnily enough, HR are already fairly busy. So it ends up being a bit of a catch-22 because they're passionate about people, but also they've already got a lot of other stuff going on. So well-being, it doesn't often get done very well. So for us, what the approach that we take to working with organisations is how do we look at this strategic approach to well-being, as opposed to just throwing money and time and effort at odd services that can be thrown in there. It's about taking this real strategic approach and putting a bit of thought behind it. So really, that's what we endeavour to do with the clients that we work with. And then I think the interesting thing about well-being is that it's a beast of a subject. So when you talk about what is well-being, well-being is defined as a person's health and a person's happiness. And when you think about health itself is really tangible. So I could do, for example, I could do a health assessment. I could do your blood pressure, your cholesterol, a full blood profile, give you a cardiovascular risk score of how likely it is you'll have a heart attack within the next 5 years. So health is largely quite measurable. But when we talk about happiness is not so measurable. And because it's not measurable, it's not classified as being peer reviewed. So it doesn't end up in any organisation or public policy, but it's massive. If we don't consider the happiness of the people that work within our organisations and of ourselves, we're really sort of doing ourselves a disservice. So that's really where we try and put a lot of emphasis now on that. But really, obviously, this whole holistic approach to well-being is the only way to go forward. So I tend to spend most of my time at the moment on Zoom calls with organisations, trying to guide them in the right direction so they get off to the right approach.
Thanks, Andy. So there's a lot of people here who aren't from big organisations, but they may benefit from some tips on how to keep positive themselves and through this. Okay, so you've heard from all of our panelists, so please do start asking questions. If you have a question specifically for somebody, please name them and please introduce yourself and your company when you ask the question. And hopefully, if the panelists keep their answers as kind of short and concise as we can get, so that we can get all the questions asked, that would be amazing. So if you'd like to come forward first. If not, we've got some pre-questions. Christopher, did we have some questions sent through before the event?
We did, yeah. We've had a couple of networkers get in touch. We've had a question, an interesting one for Sarah to start off with. Sarah, have you explored any new communication channels, particularly internal, but in response to the lockdown, given the impact on physical and face-to-face comms?
We internally, actually, we used WhatsApp. So I had a WhatsApp channel with my team, and I initially sort of sent them a daily check-in. And I kept it quite light because I felt, things were going on. So I had brought all the plants home from the office and tried to keep them alive. And I took photos every couple of days going, plants still alive, because I'm notorious for killing the plants in the office. So I've managed to keep them all alive so far. But I just did that with a little post-it saying, hope you're okay, plants still alive, yay, I'm still alive, and just checking in with them. So WhatsApp we used internally. We also recommended to a client that they use Facebook and Facebook. Manny, you'll be able to tell me. I totally forgot the name of it. It's gone. One of the Facebook group things they set up like an internal group on Facebook to keep in touch with their 90 employees. So they used that channel as well, and that worked really well for them. So a lot of it was actually social based, but then it was on what you'd call dark social. So things like Telegram, WhatsApp, Signal, something like that isn't publicly available. A lot of those channels were getting used by comms teams to stay in touch with each other, but also wider organisational teams.
Thank you, Sarah. And I liked your example earlier about being more collaborative with their comms, because you never see Burger King write that before to invite them with their competitors. Nick Wayne, you have a question?
Yes, how did you know? I was just wondering, to Manny in particular, who is the guru of digital marketing, when you're dealing with professionals who maybe, like me and most of the other people on this call, are probably having 4, 5, 6 Zoom calls a day, and at the end of the day our eyes are fairly square and we've sort of had enough of it. How do you get your digital marketing messages over to these professionals who've had enough of looking at screens?
Podcast. Have you considered podcasts, which you can, they're all music-based, audio-based. So many more businesses, so many more people right now. There's so many I probably can name off the top of my head. Stephen Bartlett's Diary of a CEO, even Kate Leeson's, I shouldn't say this, but even we have a podcast that launched in September to help communicate other, because yes, you're right, people are tired of seeing bedrooms behind people, and you want to put forward a particular view, screen time. I'm sure Andy will get into this in terms of the impact that has on well-being and mental health, and the impact it's having on sleep and productivity is key. So I do advocate that people use other channels, and we do tell clients to start looking at other ways, such as articles, more content to read, and communicating through really stuff like podcasts and creating more educational content for them to do so. So I do recommend people take breaks, but there are other platforms digitally out there other than just video and screen, such as written, even direct print sometimes might help, as well as like podcasts and audio that businesses and individuals and those trying to learn more about digital can explore.
Thank you. Do we think people are reading more?
Yes. An interesting stat is what we're seeing is longer form SEO content is converting better than shorter form. So what I mean by a longer term format is if you're doing a blog, an article, or on your website, and you're optimizing that towards a specific keyword you want your business or website to rank with on Google, we're seeing that 2,000 to 3,000 keyword content is having a longer session rate on websites, a better conversion rate, better engagement rate in general than short form content. But yes, the research and the data from our clients in the industry shows that one of the key trends we talked about in another talk early in the year was to focus on longer tail, longer form content. But don't just write content for the sake of content. It is quality over quantity. Just remember, Google ranks your website not just on how well your website is optimized from a mobile or how well it can crawl data. It's all about as well as how long our customers or consumers or users on your website based on how you rank or how you appear for search terms they type into Google.
Yeah.
It's on answering questions and pain points that your potential customers have, because that's what they're going on to Google to look for.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I know I read more articles now than I did before, but it's really the reverse of what we were told before, that people needed bite-sized chunks in their fast, busy lives. Sarah, do you agree with that in terms of comms? Are you seeing people producing longer pieces?
Yeah, and I think that's partly to do with the messages that we've got, and a lot of the messages that we've got from government of the campaign stuff that's come out. It's very short and sharp, and it is that bite-sized kind of thing that's been thrown at us. But what people want is they want more in depth, and actually sometimes they want to be taken away from what's happening. So if you can provide content that's really interesting on a particular topic, a particular subject, go for quality every time. And like Manny says, those longer form pieces do perform quite well, and I would say that our stats echo that as well in terms of the longer form content that we produce for clients definitely has far better sort of engagement stats than the shorter pieces, unless it's something really, really specific, and it might just be shorter is better. But that also goes for video, and I think for a long time we were told that video was better, like a minute, maybe 90 seconds. But there's some stats that come out sort of towards the end of last year from, I think it was YouTube, that showed longer videos actually perform quite well, so up to 10 minutes on video. And a lot of that is to do with things like TikTok and Instagram Live, and we're getting more and more used to watching like 15-20 minutes on now. You can see that actually reflected in things like Netflix. So Netflix are producing shows that are 15-20 minutes long, because that is a really good attention span that someone has at the moment.
It's interesting, isn't it? Maybe we're slowing down a little finally. So a question for Alex around LinkedIn that came through was, you talked about starting a conversation. What's been the most effective posts you've seen on LinkedIn during lockdown to enhance reputation and to generate interest, and why?
So that's a good question. So LinkedIn's a funny one, really. So as you build your network on LinkedIn, what you'll find is that you add people who you've met, and you'll add people who you perhaps haven't met, but you know you want to start a conversation with. We call this sort of the long-term strategy. So you add somebody because you think they'd be a valuable part of your network going forwards, and vice versa. You might not necessarily have met this person. So the type of content you want to be producing. So what tends to get really, a lot of likes is like any other social media. So something personal, some success that you've had, sharing good news, that tends to get really, really, really good engagement with those types of posts, as it would on sort of any other social media in a way. And it's quite funny in a respect, because we know it's a professional social media, but if you start posting too much about products, services, it doesn't really get the same type of content, same type of attraction in terms of likes and comments and engagement. So there's a good balance between the two, because while you're meeting people that you know, obviously they know about you. But when you're adding people to your network who perhaps you haven't met before, as we are probably all doing right now, you want a good blend of that content, so that personalized content, the successes, but also a little bit as well about what you do. And that could be in the form of sharing news, sharing articles. There's always a good blend between the two, so that you do get your product or service out there, but you also share some posts that protrude you as a person, so that people can get an understanding of who you are, and some of the successes perhaps that you've had.
Yeah, you really don't want people to think you're selling to them, do you, on a social platform?
Never, no. So raising awareness about your product or service is vital. but actually it's the posts that sort of communicate who you are as a person and some of the things that you've been involved in that tend to get the higher levels of engagement. So a good strategy and a blend of both is always the best cause. But don't be disheartened if you are putting what you think is a really good piece of content out around your business and it doesn't get a lot of engagement to start with. That will come over time.
Brilliant. So Jerry Andrews, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, question for Andy. Andy, I was just thinking, quite often we're always sort of think about workplace well-being in terms of some of the big organizations and their strategies and, like I say, you know, all the HR effort that goes into that. But how do you think small businesses and maybe one-man, one-woman bands can actually help themselves?
Well, I think first of all, it's realizing there's a lot of resources out there. It's, you know, we often think that, you know, to have a wellbeing strategy or to have a wellbeing program, we've got to have some form of budget. But it's not the case. Quite often, it's just a case of seeing what resources are available that don't cost anything. So, I mean, as an example, so one of the things that we kind of put out there is, as an organisation, we have like a wellbeing partnership program, so designed specifically for SMEs who don't have a significant budget.
Is everyone? Well, I don't know what happened there.
So it's okay for me.
Yeah,
I think Andy might have just dropped out, Jess.
Okay.
I think there's another question. Let me just move up. Sorry, I'll just let Andy back in the room again. There we go.
Should we move on to another question and we'll come back to Andy?
Yeah.
So, sorry, I don't know what happened there.
Are you back with us, Andy?
I think so.
Okay. Do you want to just finish what you were saying?
Yeah, so I was just saying, so one of the things that we put together with this Wellbeing Insight, or this Wellbeing Partnership Program, because what we realised is there are a lot of SMEs, a lot of small organisations out there that don't have anything in place. And, you know, I mean, for example, we put it out there to all these organisations. We found there were a lot of hospices coming back to us who arguably have employees that are on the front line who have got probably more stressful jobs than any of us, to be fair, and they have nothing in place whatsoever. So one of the things we wanted to do was to make sure that there was some level of support out there. So it's even things like generating content. You know, there's so much content out there. Part of it is sifting through and identifying what content is available and can be used without giving misinformation. But then things like there's a brilliant website. I can't remember the name of it now. I will find out before we go. But you basically, what you do is you put in your postcode, and what it does, it generates what support is available in your local area. And so, for example, so if I put in my home postcode, it would identify what local bereavement services are in my local area, what mental health support is in my local area. So that's quite an easy win for a lot of small organisations. The other thing to realise is that there's quite a lot of resources within an organisation. So you know, you might not have mental health experts, but you might, for example, have somebody who's keen on running, who might actually want to champion having a running club within an organisation, or a language club or something, just to generate some sort of social connectivity. But I think where a lot of organisations go potentially wrong is that they feel that there's this dramatic need for a big budget. Now, an example would be one of the first things organisations invest in is something like an EAP, an employee assistance programme. And typically, most EAPs get about a 3 to 4% or 4 to 5% usage rate. So it's something that's very expensive, but that gets very little use as well. So one of the things I would always encourage organisations to do is identify what support is available in your local area. So looking at national support, looking at local support, things like the university, for example, has got a great chaplaincy. So that's a great resource that otherwise would go unused. So So it's with a little bit of research, with literally half an hour to an hour of research of what's around you, you can put together a compelling program of events and a program of support without investing anything. It's just getting that insight.
Thanks, Andy. And if you've got any links to share, if you could put them in the chat, that would be great. Christopher, have we got another question?
We certainly do, yeah. We've had a couple of questions for Manny. I'll just ask you this first one. This is from a Leeds Trinity colleague. What do people want to see in videos now as a consequence of lockdown? Do they have more patience to listen to more stories, or are they just looking more for facts? What would your take be?
That's a very difficult one. There's so many different types of video content you can explore. It really depends on the audience. Some people are there for education, so they want to learn. We have more time now being at home, not having to travel, not being in a chaotic environment, that we can spend more time on YouTube, looking at tutorials, getting advice and insights in terms of what we're doing. But if you go to different platforms, it varies in terms of types of content you see. So if you're on TikTok, then you're going to see short, funny, meme-based videos. If you're on Instagram, you're going to see a mixture of funny videos that you would also see on TikTok, but also videos in other senses in terms of people sharing their experiences around news stories that are happening around the world. And then Facebook is again completely different again because of the audience demographics. So different platforms have different audience demographics, and you have different video. For example, YouTube, as Sarah mentioned earlier, you are seeing people like Mr. Beast, who's turning over tens of millions of pounds as a result of, as an influencer. But he's coming up with video content that lasts between 10 and 15 minutes, but it has nothing to do with anything around educational. It's just, coming up with stupid ideas and questions in terms of, if you had £1 million to spend in a minute in a store, what could you actually do? And then he goes out and gives someone £1 million, and so you've got 10 minutes to go spend it in the store. So let's see how much you can get away. And people find that interesting. And what would you do? Then you start thinking, what would I do? So it really depends on who your audience is geared towards in terms of what they're looking for. One thing I'd recommend is going on something like Quora and typing in a particular topic or subject, a keyword. Then you'll see what it is that people are searching for in relation to that subject. So if you put your business industry in, you'll be able to find it. And then as they start gearing your content towards, based on questions that people are answering from a business point of view. Resonate with your consumers, tell a story, engage, offer empathy in that sense.
Okay, thank you. Christopher, was there another one?
I think we've got Priya in. Priya, are you waiting to ask a question?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so my question's to Manny. Manny, I'm now creating my digital strategy, and I wanted to ask, because you've got your video, written, audio, and visual. When you're creating a strategy, would you say you have to create pieces equally in these areas, or should I just zoom in on one and see what the feedback is before looking at all the other areas?
I would create a content plan. So yes, focus on a particular area. Try and look at different elements you could cover within that area, not just one topic. So if you have like a subject area, try and create 2-3 different pieces. Put it out. But when you put it out there, put it out with a call to action so people either engage. And I don't mean a call to action to like buy now or go to our site. Use stuff like what LinkedIn offer you in terms of like opinion polls, get people to vote on what they think. What you'll start getting from stuff like that and engagement and comments from people is they'll start giving you ideas of what other content to start producing in that particular area, because they'll start giving you views and polls and start entering competitions, etc. Or sharing their advice, etc. And you can then use that response as the next stage of your content within that. So yeah, focus on particular areas. At Bubble, with clients, we focus on particular areas. So, if you go on to our social platforms, whether you go to our YouTube or go to our LinkedIn, you see each week we have a particular trend or topic of what we're talking about that week. And it falls through to what we have as a blog on our website, to how we then break that blog down to digestible posts that go out on LinkedIn every day throughout the week. And then it kind of tails around a wider subject in terms of what we do as part of our bite size and that podcast that we've launched that month. It's on contract.
Thanks, Manny. Great question here.
Cheers.
Christopher, do we have another question?
We do. This one's actually been asked on the survey by Kim, and she's asked both Alex and Sarah. So if we perhaps start with Alex, the question is, sorry if you bear with me, I'm just going to get the item on. Are there any quick wins that are being overlooked, particularly for somebody who runs a small business? So Alex, what would your thoughts be in terms of quick wins, in terms of lead generation?
That's again a very good question. So I think as a small business, actually, the advantage of using something like LinkedIn is you can get quite a high volume of messages out. So we talk about two types of messages. One are posts, which are about raising awareness of something to your network. The other one are about starting a conversation using LinkedIn Instant Messenger. And LinkedIn's free, unless you're doing a really high volume of messages, direct messages from person to person. You're not really going to need to pay LinkedIn for the features such as Sales Navigator, which can be useful, but generally for a higher volume. So really get on board with LinkedIn. It's free to use. It's a great way to extend your network. And what we found is that you can make connections really easily. So if you're sending a lot of messages out on LinkedIn saying, I think it'd be great to be a part of your network, the accept rate around getting people to respond to those around 30%. So every 100 messages you send to people that perhaps you haven't met or you don't know, 30 of them are going to be accepting and be a part of your network. Now that's great if you want a more longer term strategy to meeting people and getting conversations going. LinkedIn's also great for starting a conversation for something short term. So actually I really want to have a call because I think the product or service I've got can add value to you. And actually what you really want to do there is you've got an introductory message to somebody that you can send. It's about 300 characters. And again, it's free. And you'd say something like, I'm looking to connect in relation to our new product or service. I'd be keen to offer you some free access. Would you be free for a call? Now, your accept rate on that obviously is going to be a lot lower, maybe around 3 or 5%. But the people that do accept those messages are going to want to have a call with you. And you're going to be able to discuss your product or service. And it always helps for that to have a free offering. So if you've got something free you want to engage with businesses about, LinkedIn's a great platform to do that. I mean, we're a small business. We have 3 people in our main management team. And as a free resource, it's something that we've capitalized on, and I'd encourage you to do the same as well.
Thanks, Alex. And Sarah?
Yeah, in terms of quick wins, one thing I would say is I don't know what sector you're in, obviously, at the moment, but don't overlook email marketing at the moment as well. That can be quite powerful right now, and a good way to build conversation. So when we think of email marketing, we think of newsletters going out all the time and just very product based, and that might be right for your business if that's what you're in, but also conversational emails do really well at the moment. So I subscribe to 2 that are fantastic, and it's like a conversation between me and that other person because I feel it's very tailored, it's very personal, it's not trying to get them to buy anything at all. So that is one quick one that you could look at. In terms of actual press coverage and some media relations, journalists really want non-COVID content at the moment. They are up to the eyeballs in COVID content. So if you've got something you can offer them that is not COVID related, then definitely go for that. So if you're looking at regional things that affect the industry, are you hiring at a time when no one else is? Have you launched a new product that's totally different in the marketplace? Do you have an interesting point of view or backstory that you can draw on? As Manny mentioned, we love stories, and I think right now we desperately want stories. We want good stories and stories about people that we care about, because we are so far removed from, other people in our lives. We want to feel a closeness, and I think from a comms point of view and PR point of view, storytelling is massive at the moment. And we often overlook the stories that we have ourselves as people and the ones that are within our business. So have a think about what's happened maybe in the last 3-6 months. And also look at things like journal request hashtags. So hashtag journal request on Twitter, always a good one to follow. It also works on LinkedIn as well, so you can see them on LinkedIn as well. Press plugs, anything like that, and create a Twitter list of journalists that are in your sector that you want to follow, and check in on them on a every couple of days to see what they're saying and engage with them that way as well.
Thank you, Sarah. There's really good advice here, and I like how it's all blending together, the three sectors with storytelling. So, Alex, there was a question for you from Michael Tolan around how can you sell the outcome rather than the process, and Michael's actually put storytelling, perhaps. So, you know, it all fits in.
So I guess with that one, I think what you're saying is actually, how do I use LinkedIn to get my story, my message across? You know, as again, joining the dots here, I think one of the best ways to do that is through coming up with a strategy around the type of posts that you create. So I work with some companies who do a lot around wealth management, and that's a particularly difficult one to get conversations going. Because you've got to find people who fit a certain criteria. I think the first thing you can always do is ask yourself, you know, who's getting value from this? So LinkedIn's great for categorizing demographics by sort of age, by seniority, by location, by what role they work in. So the first thing I would say is always use that to your advantage and always know who's going to get the value. And you can do that before you've sold a product or service. You can do it for an existing service. And then I think the ability of LinkedIn to share different types of media, so videos, different types of posts, different types of journals, and use a blend of those to get your message across. So I think that would probably be my answer in terms of that, and actually using those posts, making sure the posts are open, so they're not just restricted to people within your network, is a really good way to increase visibility with those as well.
Yeah, and Nick, you had a comment about people that the amount of requests you get from LinkedIn and posts.
Yeah, I mean, I seem to be getting more and more requests. A lot of people seem to have too much time on hands at the moment, and they're going through LinkedIn, seeing who may or may not be interested. And you know, I am quite selective about who I say yes to. Maybe in doing that sort of selection, I'm potentially missing out on good contacts. But there do seem to be people that have got nothing to do with me, what I do, who I am, and from different parts of the country, and more recently overseas. Should I be biting the bullet and just link in with them, or should I carry on being selective?
So it's a great question, Nick. And first part of that is there are so many more people using LinkedIn now, as we've lost the sort of face-to-face networking and events for the foreseeable future. So people are starting to build LinkedIn into part of their connection strategies. The second part of that is LinkedIn's great because for anybody that adds you that you don't know, you should be able to view everything on their profile. You should be able to view their role title, where they work, what job they're in. They should have a photo. So these are the things that you can look for if you're not sure about somebody. The last part of that, of course, is actually what are they saying to you? Because somebody that wants to have a conversation with you directly should come to the point. So if they say, look, I'm really interested. I think you have a lot of value in this service. And you go, no, that's not for me. Great. You don't have to accept. Be selective, be picky, because those people actually really want to connect, have a conversation with you. If someone's saying, look, it'd be great to be part of your network, I think we get a lot of value working together. That's someone that you could perhaps accept even if you didn't know, because they might have something they might want to talk in the future, or they might want to just share some posts with you on the feed. So again, it's all about what they're saying, and make sure you look at who they are as well, because these people should have a complete profile who are getting in touch with you, so you can make your own assessment that way as well.
Okay, thank you. And just a question from Jerry: should your profile read more like a document rather than a CV?
So I'll flip that question on the head. Is what is the purpose of you being on LinkedIn? So there are multiple purposes. So if you're looking for a new job, then yes, big yourself up. Make sure that the things that are relevant to the jobs you're going for appear at the top of the list. Make sure you make those stand out and proofread it like a CV. If you're looking to engage and network with people, and you want them to see certain aspects about your company, you can use the articles section more. You can frame your header and your background to give, and your photo, even your profile photo, to give information about the business that you work for. So you've got a wide image that you can put at the top of the page that says lots and lots of different things about the business that you work for, especially if you're looking to connect with people. So treat it as something that a lot of people are going to see. It's there for a professional purpose, but make sure, I'd ask you just to think about what do you want to achieve with LinkedIn before you go about doing that.
Thank you. And so just before the panel give us their closing thoughts, I just wanted to ask the panel about the future. So lifting us out of the pandemic for a moment, how can people plan for the future? What do you think we'll all be talking about in a year's time from your sector? What's emerging? Um,
I'll go that.
Sarah?
Okay.
Mhm.
For us, it's a climate emergency. Absolutely.
Okay.
That is something obviously we're talking about within industry, and we're starting to see it in mainstream more and more. But the pandemic has shown it's brought up some really interesting questions about the climate emergency. And a poll came out today, and that overwhelmingly, it was one of the largest polls ever done, that 64% of people want action on the climate. So I think in the next 12 months, we are going to see that question more and more, and businesses big and small are going to be asked about their ESG credentials. So what are they doing for the environment? How do they operate? Are they operating ethically, sustainably? All those kind of questions, absolutely.
That's really interesting you say that, because our next business network session is going to be on climate emergency. So thanks for giving us a plug there. Manny?
I'm going to say artificial intelligence and augmented reality. Video has become so much more immersive now as part of digital marketing, that the next stage of video, when you look at just how big TikTok has been this year, in terms of users and content, that augmented reality is going to really, really grow and build, going into 2022 and beyond. And more businesses are going to rely on artificial intelligence tools and platforms and data platforms to really understand what you as consumers are thinking in real time, and this sounds bad, but to get you to buy stuff you don't want to buy. And unfortunately, that's the way the technology is going, because of how quick and advanced it's coming through.
Thank you. Alex?
So 3 things from me, really. First one is that, prospecting or making connections remotely needs to be part of everybody's business going forward. Whether we do get back to meeting face to face or not, what a lot of people have learned is that it is possible to make connections. People want to make connections while being remote, and using remote strategies for doing that needs to be a part of your business moving forward. Second thing is that actually you can have quite a lot of success doing this. So while in some industries sales cycles have lengthened, by actually not having that face-to-face contact, people are finding that they're getting more done. Whereas you travel, for example, in some industries you travel all day to have a meeting. Now you can meet 8 people easily through Zoom meetings. And the last thing that I probably would just say is that across all the businesses I've worked with, we all miss seeing people face to face, especially in a business owner, business development point of view. So when we are allowed to meet up again, I think that there will be a resurgence in events and networking, because people are missing that face-to-face contact. As much as the efficiencies of working online and doing things online have taken over our lives, there's always going to be a place for face-to-face, and I'd expect that to come back strongly when we're allowed.
That's good to hear, Alex. I for one really miss our buzzy networks and seeing you all in the flesh. Yeah. And Andy?
So yeah, following perfectly on from that, I think one of the things that obviously organisations are going to look at in the sort of hopefully the foreseeable future is the return to work. I think with our client base, it varies massively. We've got some clients that are saying they're not going back to the office. We've got some clients that are saying we're desperate to get back to the office. So I think it's one of the first things for organisations to realise what's a priority for them, and what does the future of work look like for them on an individual basis. From I suppose you talk about personalisation, the fact that we are more efficient now, arguably, because we can do so many more calls, and we're cutting out hours of commuting. And then so it's are we going to return back to the workplace, but also then how do we give people the health confidence to return back? Because there's a huge amount of health anxiety of people who've been locked down since March, who have been isolating since March, and it's like, how do we actually get those people to return if they feel comfortable to do so? So there's going to be obviously the sort of the mental health side of that. But I think when we talk about the 4 pillars of well-being, we talk about physical health, mental health, social and financial well-being. I think one of the things that all organisations, and myself, we've been guilty of is we've not been paying enough attention to social well-being. And obviously this year and over the last year, when it's been stripped from us, we've had this sort of light bulb moment that social well-being is actually probably what keeps everything else together. So I think what organisations need to do and hopefully will do going forward is put a bit more emphasis on social well-being. So talking about community, talking about the power of collaboration and human contact, that's something that I think a lot of people will be itching to get back to.
Yeah.
So for me, I think that's where a lot of attention will be placed.
Interesting. It's like we're in a mass experiment, isn't it, for this, to see what we really need. Okay, so I'm conscious of time. We've got 8 minutes. I do want to finish on time. So if the panelists could give us some closing remarks, preferably something that hasn't yet been mentioned, we haven't been able to draw out of you from our questions, that a key thing that people could go away and do from your area, that would be great. So I'll just do it in the standard order. So I'll start with you, Sarah.
For me, I would say we've mentioned strategy a few times this session. If you're working on a strategy, whether it be digital, traditional PR, or even business development, think short term right now. Generally speaking, you do maybe 12 months, 18 months, but things are changing so rapidly. Keep your strategy agile, review it every month, change it if need be every 2 to 3 months, keep it fresh and keep it front and centre, because we've seen that where we are now was not where we're going to be in 6 months' time. So if you are thinking about any kind of strategy, be it content, as I say, or PR, make sure it's built and designed to be changed easily. The other thing it is, when you are communicating, do it with empathy. We are humans talking to other humans, and what we've seen in great examples and poor examples is being too corporate in tone, completely not reading the room. If you are talking to people on social, whether it's on LinkedIn or any kind of communications, have empathy when you're just talking to other people. And the final thing, listen. It's really tempting right now to push out communication after communication. Sometimes you need to stop and you need to listen to what's being said by your customer base and really understand what it is they need, how they need it, and when they need it. So maybe spend some time doing like social listening, things like that, to truly understand how you can help your audience.
Thank you. Brilliant tips there. Thank you. Manny?
I just want to kind of reiterate, obviously, again, what Sarah said, that there is an appetite for businesses right now to sell and, continue to grow despite the pandemic. Don't be afraid to invest in digital marketing. Obviously, you need to know what you're doing, look out there, reach out to people for advice, follow, other experts, and listen to what they're saying. Right now, there's so many new businesses that have started and are set up in a pandemic. A lot of the services that people in this event right now offer are available. You just got to be a bit brave to go out and actually, reach out and, invest into a bit of digital marketing. The one thing I will say in terms of key things to really focus on is your website. Your website right now is more important than when you are meeting people face to face, because it's the first impression they're going to get of you as an individual, as a business, whether you're B2B or B2C. So that well optimized website, and we don't do websites here, which is why I'm saying it. We do media activity to drive people to your website. If you don't have a well formalized website in line with Google's guidelines, then it's going to be hard for you to use channels like Google Ads, YouTube, social media advertising, as well as search engine optimization to drive people. And I can guarantee you there are people out there looking for services right now in your services. You've just got to do the research, look at the data, and look at the trends of what's going on. Test and be agile within the market. And as Sarah said, the strategies we're doing for clients right now are very, short term, because the online environment is changing. One stat I want to leave with you, which is really important, is we know that 46% of UK consumers that have adapted online shopping will continue online shopping as their new normal post-pandemic. So if you're not optimizing your online presence to sell your business services or your B2C products or services, then now's the time to start thinking about how to optimize your site to do that, and then adapting the strategy and being agile with strategy in terms of the different digital channels that will allow you to sell your products and services right now.
Thanks very much, Manny. Everyone's going to go off and scrutinise their websites after this. Alex, quickly from you.
Yeah, just a couple of quick things. So a lot of small businesses out there. We've seen through the data that we collect on Pomander that there have been more and more new businesses opening every week, and that's accelerated during lockdown. So if you are starting a new business, if you are a small business, you're not alone. Within the UK, 99.3% of UK businesses turn over 25 million or less and fit within that SME bracket. That's a really huge number. And then the second thing, just on prospecting, to follow on from some of the chats we've had today with reaching out on LinkedIn, keep it bespoke if you really want maximum results. Now, it's not obviously always easy to write a message to somebody and keep it, to the point to that person. But if you do want maximum results, keep it bespoke. There are ways you can automate messaging on LinkedIn which work for certain things, but having that sort of human element and making it bespoke is always going to give you the best results.
Thanks very much, Alex. And Andy?
So I think when you're looking at driving well-being at work, you've got to make sure it's completely inclusive. I think one of the things that organisations sometimes struggle with is they will jump into delivering something because it's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction, and quite often it will isolate a lot of people within the organisation. So as an example, if you decide to do a walking challenge or a running club or something like that, what will usually happen is you'll end up engaging the people that are already fit and healthy. And it's about how do we reach everyone else within the organisation. So it's a bit about getting your thinking caps on, being a bit creative, but really it's making sure that well-being is taking on the approach that it's about personalisation.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a bit of hitting the mark. The other thing as well, from a well-being stance, I would say that if it has to be actionable. If you're going to run a session, for the sake of running a session, it's going to be a complete waste of time. So you need to make sure there are actionable points, and also off the back of it, we identify what we're all accountable for, as in what's the organisation responsible for, what are line managers responsible for, what are individual, say for example, mental health first aiders or champions, what are they responsible for, but on an individual basis, what are individuals responsible for when it comes to their own well-being. And if that's not highlighted, and it's not this sort of like top-down and bottom-up approach, it doesn't tend to work. So I'd arguably say that you're probably better off saving your money until you've got a strategy in place, as opposed to just throwing and trying to do something as a bit of an overnighter.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, that brings us to the end. Some really rich tips there. I picked up being agile and keeping it personal as good themes that have thread through all of those sectors. I might write a blog post on LinkedIn to kind of try and bring together all of the points, so we can capture that. And of course, we'll share the recording as well if people want to get involved. But it's really made me miss the network. So I don't know when, but hopefully we can all meet in person sometime soon. But please join me with a round of applause for our panelists. But thank you so much. Do connect with each other through our LinkedIn group or via your other channels, and hope to see you at the next one. We'll send dates out soon. Thanks again to everyone. Lovely to see so many of you here today. Thanks, you.
Guys.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers, guys.